All right, as promised, this is part two of Joseph and his brothers. So, where we left off in the last video is they were given corn because of the famine. They went into Egypt and they were able to get corn. They purchased it, but their money was put back in there. When they left, they were asked to bring back the missing brother, Benjamin, and as a ransom, pretty much, they held Joseph held Simeon in prison. So we are going to cover chapter 43, verses 1 through 34 in this entire video. It is still Genesis, first book of the Bible. So chapter 43, verse 1 talks about the famine becoming worse. So as time passes, of course, year one of a famine, crops are a little bad. Year two, crops are really bad. Year three, it gets worse and worse and worse as it goes on. And so after a period of time, the corn that they had purchased, even though they got their refund, the corn that they had brought back from Egypt is depleted. And now they're in a space where they have to go get food again, or they're going to die off. They're not able to grow any food. They're not able to support it. The famine is affecting their ability to feed the animals, their ability to feed their families, their wives, their children, things like that. So there is a full conversation, and Jacob says, y'all got to go back to Egypt and get more food. Y'all got to go back. It's got to happen. We've been avoiding it, but it has to be done. And so Judah was like, yeah, but you gonna send Benjamin? Because if Benjamin doesn't go with us, we're not going to be able to get anything. Last time we went, we got thrown in prison, and Simeon is still there. It is believed that 2 years have passed. Simeon is still in jail. His wife and children just at home waiting to see what's going to happen. Nobody is going back to get him because Jacob or Israel does not want to surrender Benjamin just in case something happens. He's so afraid that something's going to happen to this kid, he won't let him out of his sight. And this kid is now an adult. And so he's like, look, if you don't send Benjamin back with us, we're not going to be able to get food. It's no point. We're not going to do it. And so Israel is like, look, why? Why did you tell him you had another brother? Why did you tell this man that, you had a father who was here? Why did you give up all this information? Like, didn't I tell you don't talk to strangers? Like, why did you give away all this information? And the guy was like, and Judah's explaining to him, this man asked us specific questions, and we're trying to prove that we're not spies. We're trying to prove that we're not out here trying to exploit the weaknesses of Egypt. And so we had to answer him honestly. Like, you taught us to be honest men. We gave him an honest answer. And so we have to go back with Benjamin. And so in verse 8, Judah tells his father, send him with me. If anything happens to him, it's going to happen to me. I'm going to make sure personally that nothing happens to this guy. Like, I'm going to watch over him in a way, I'm going to watch him closer than I watch my own kids. Like, you had the pledge from Reuben who said, if anything happens to Benjamin, you can take my sons' lives. Not take my sons and let them be yours, but literally take my sons' lives. Like, I'm betting on my legacy here that he's okay. Judah says, look, we gotta go. We're out of food. In the time that we spend in talking about this, we could have been there and came back. And so he said, look, whatever happens to this kid happens to me. I understand how you feel. Whatever happens to him happens to me. And I'm not going to let anything go down. So they go. And in verse 12, they are instructed. Verse 11, Israel says to them, look, whatever's got to happen, happens, because we're going to die without this. I don't have any more options. I've delayed as long as I could. But what I want you to do is take them a gift. Let's try and get on this good side, because every time you go, y'all done went to prison, I done lost a son, I'm sending my favorite son. So send a present. He said, take a little balm, little honey and spices, some myrrh, some nuts, some almonds. Give him some things that we have here. Give them some things that we have here. And that way you're trading, you're bringing something in. They know that you're not a thief. They know that you're not a spy. They know that you're not coming from like a very poor, underprivileged situation where you're coming to beg and be a leech. You're coming in with valuable things as well to purchase what you cannot grow. We got some things here. We got some spices and all this stuff in Canaan. We have some of these things, but what we don't have is the ability to grow the corn, the grain that we need in order to balance out this diet, in order to make sure that other stuff is done. I got sheep. We throw a little, we make a little lamb chop, but we don't have any. We don't have no polenta to go with it. So he said, and also take double the money. The money that y'all should have paid that got returned to you last time, take that plus what you're gonna purchase now. Make sure you have double the price of what you're gonna get so they understand you're not coming in here to take. You're coming in here to purchase. You're coming in here to trade. You're coming in here as honest men. And so in verse 13, he said, take your brother and let's go. He said, go ahead, take your brother. And in 14, he puts a prayer of protection over him, that God Almighty will give you mercy and that he'll send you away with your older brother and Benjamin. And if I am bereaved, I am bereaved. We see that in books in the future of the Bible. If I perish, let me perish. But what he's saying is, if I'm gonna grieve, if I'm gonna lose my son, if I'm gonna lose my sons, then it's just gonna happen. Because me staying here and not doing anything, I'm gonna lose them anyways. So I can watch them slowly starve to death, or I can put them out here on the off chance that this is gonna work out and they're gonna be able to procure what is needed. They're gonna be able to purchase the food that we need to survive. And so they took their presents, they took the double money, they took all these gifts and things that they were supposed to bring, and they went down to Egypt and they stand before Joseph again. And so when Joseph in verse 16 sees Benjamin, when he sees that they have returned and it is yet 10 of them again. I know I got one. It should have been 9 that came back, but 10 of them came back. I know you brought a brother with you. And so he says to the ruler of his house, or in effect, who he was at Potiphar's house, he has somebody in that position in his house now. And so he says to him, hey, prepare food for them, set them up. I want them to come to my house and eat. They're gonna have a meal with me at noon. Let's break bread. And so they come, so they do what they're told. And so they're brought to Joseph's house. And in verse 18, it says the men were afraid. Because last time they saw him, he threw them all in jail. They spent 3 days in jail. And this time he was like, hey, come sit in my house and have a meal. This man seems as bipolar and crazy as possible because he is going from highs and lows. First time they see him, let's go spend 3 days in jail. He's literally threatening their lives. And now he's like, hey, come have a meal with me. They are afraid. And they know that they got their money back. They know that when they left the last time, they paid for the corn, but when they got away, they checked the bags and recognized that the corn, in fact, the purchase price of the corn was actually inside of the sacks with the corn. So in verse 19, they go to the person in charge and they whisper to him. It was like, hey, so last time we were here, we purchased corn and they put the money back in. I want to be honest and tell you up front. I'm going to say it again. So they went up to the guy and like just volunteered the information and said, hey, last time we were here, we purchased corn, but when we got home, we noticed that the money was in the sacks. We noticed that the money was there and that you actually didn't receive the money that we told you. So I'm going to bring this to modern day. When you go to the grocery store and you give the person a 20 and your change should be $10 and some coins, and you when they put the money in your hand, it's $20 and some coins. Be honest. Now, the Lord done blessed me with some money today. No. Be honest. Hey, you gave me a 20. I should only got 10 back. Let us be honest and integral in the things that we do. Let us look for opportunities to be an example of a fully bodied believer of Christ. Look for opportunities to do the right thing. Stop trying to declare, I done found $30. You done found somebody's wallet outside in a grocery cart, or somebody left their purse in a grocery cart at the grocery store. And you like, take me a little reward money, and turn in the purse with no cash in it. Why? God ain't asked you to do that. Let's be integral. Let's volunteer the information. And so what they see is when they go and they volunteer it, they volunteer the information. In verse 23, he said, "Peace be unto you." Don't even worry, friend. Don't trip off of that. Don't be concerned. Your God and the God of your father. Again, they are acknowledging God. They are in a land where people worship a different God. They are in a space where people do not acknowledge the Hebrew God. But he says, your God and the God of your father. How do you know who my God and the God of my father is? How do you know I worship the same way my father does? Something about when you got God in your life, people know. He gave you that treasure. He is the reason why this money was back in there. We know you got it. It's okay. It's okay. We know you have the money. It's fine. Don't worry about it. God got you, man. It's a little favor. And so he went and got Simeon. The purchase price of their brother was their honesty. The purchase price of their brother was their honesty. They went and said, "Hey, I could have been quiet. I could have not said anything. But as proof that I am an integral person, as proof that I have integrity, I'm going to deal honestly with you. Here's what went on." He said, "Don't even worry about it. It's good. Y'all good. It was a test. You passed. Here's your brother." The redemption price of their brother who sat in prison for all that time for no reason was their honesty. Had they not said anything, would Simeon been returned? Probably, because Joseph was in the mix. But that right there proved to him that they've learned their lesson. This is not just a guilt thing. This is not just a space and time where they are trying to do what they got to do to get by, but they've actually learned and understood how to be responsible for and to each other. They are brothers in every sense of the word, not just a group of men that, got the same parents. Not even the same parents in some situations, got the same dad, but they actually have a loyalty. Okay. So Simeon comes out and the men come and he gives them water so they can wash their feet. They walk around in sandals. They got dusty, dirty feet because they've been traveling for some time. So they get a chance to get cleaned up. Water to wash your feet is essentially when you come to somebody's house, you take your shoes off, you wash your hands and face before you sit at the table. You collect yourself, go to the restroom, get yourself together. That's what this is. He gave them a space and time to kind of get themselves ready for dinner. And they made ready the present. So all the things that they brought, the nuts, the myrrhs, the spices, these things that they brought as a gift for Joseph, they get all that together. So it's not sitting in sacks from being carried all this way. They actually pull it together and make it presentable so that they can give it to him as a thank you. And they all get ready to have a meal. Okay. So in verse 26, Joseph gets there. He's still at work. He said, "Take him to my house and we're going to have lunch together." And so he's still at work. And so he comes back from work and is ready to have his lunch with his brothers who they still don't know it's him. And so when they come in verse 26, it says, "Joseph came home and they brought him the present which was in their hands to the house and bowed themselves to him to the earth." The same way he saw in his dreams that his brothers were going to bow to him, his brothers bowed to him. All 11 of them bowed in the way he saw in his dream. He didn't know how it was going to happen. He didn't know why it was going to happen. It's kind of fitting that he dreamed that their sheaves of wheat would bow because at this point, that's what they came there for. That's what the whole bringing about of them coming in is that they came there for grain. They came there for corn. They came there for this wheat, this barley, this kind of crop that they're not able to raise currently. The thing that he saw in the dream is the thing that brings them back together. And they bow. And so he asked them, "Hey, how's your daddy doing? Is he alive? Is he still hanging in there?" And they're like, "Yeah, he's in good health. He all right. He a little sad sometimes." They left that part out. He's really struggling with his son being here. Left that part out. But they were like, he's there. And it says, and they bowed their heads down and made obeisance. They bowed to him in worship. Not in worship like, you're the one true God kind of worship. But we recognize that you're an authority. in the way that you would take your hat off during the national anthem. That type of respect. In the way that when the judge comes into a room, you stand up. This is that type of bow or that type of level, like that respect given. And so in verse 29, he says, he saw Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Look, is that your youngest brother? The one that you told me about?" And they're like, "Yeah, this is the brother that we told we were gonna bring back." And he had to run away because everything at the deepest pit of his stomach, all of the things, not the dream, not the pain from all these years, not any of those things kind of banged in his head. But what hit him in his gut was how much he missed his brothers and how exciting it was to be able to see them again. And so he again had to go out to his into his bedroom and weep. This is the second time. And people he thought he was never going to see again. His whole family he thought he would never see again. And here they are standing in his house ready to eat. The very brothers that sold him into slavery, who could not care for him, who could not love him, who could not do right by him, they are standing in his house ready to share a meal with him. He got his family back. He got news that his father is doing well. He is happy. And so after he get collect himself, he goes and sheds some tears and he goes and pours out all of that pain, all that anger, all of that sadness, all of that despair at really believing that he would never see his family again. At thinking that this was never gonna happen for him. He got all that out and he washed his face, pulled himself together, said he refrained himself, meaning he pulled himself together. He had to, you know that work face when you having a whole really bad day and you really just want to sit on the floor and cry, but you still got stuff you got to get done. The way Mother's Day just passed. So like literally the way that you have to sometimes put your feelings to the side and worry about your babies. Your babies are having a good day. You know the rent is late. You know that there's an impossible situation. You know these bills are piling up. But you still gotta go and smile and run and play at the park with your kids. That tighten up you do where you swallow everything that's going on and you allow them to have a moment. He had to do that. And so he goes out and he sets a place for himself separately because Egyptians and Hebrews don't eat together. Because there are cultural differences, their food choice differences, and their lifestyle differences. They don't eat together. And then on top of that, he's a high-ranking official. Like you typically don't get to sit down at a restaurant with the president. You don't typically, share spaces like that. They got a different set of places where they are, a different set of way of doing things. But it is considered an abomination or a thing that's taboo or strongly discouraged for the Egyptians to break bread or to eat with the Hebrews because Hebrews are shepherds. There is a connotation that they are dirty and dusty and in the ground and touching animals and gross and all these other things. Like in the way you don't want nobody to sit at your table with dirty fingernails, that type of thing. They got dirty hands. Not like they've done something wrong, but literally dirt. And so he sat there with them and just marveled at him. It says that he just looked from one to the next and just was so overwhelmed with joy that his brothers were again next to him. The 12 have been reunited. They don't even know that the missing brother that they've mourned for because they understand their mistakes, that they carry a level of guilt and responsibility for, is sitting among them. They don't even know that the original crew is all back together. And so he went out. And so what he did was he gave out the food. He served them. But when he served Benjamin with 5 times more. He gave him the benefits of more. He gave him 5 times more. And that 5 times larger portion is so that, and this is when like they were given food and drink. So he got, they kept his cup full, they kept his plate full so that he could be relaxed. so that he can be trusting. If you grow up knowing that your older brother was murdered, and you know that your mom died giving birth to you, like, you probably going, and your father literally won't let you out of his sight. You have a different understanding of life. Being sheltered and protected in those type of situations, you have a nervousness sometimes that's kind of raised into you, because everything around surrounding you and your family is a little horrible. Like, it's stressing. And so he has a couple different, he got to get loose. And so he just wants him to relax, and that they can be merry. And saying merry literally just means happy and enjoy themselves. He wanted to have a little reunion, a real party, and that's what he was able to accomplish. Okay, quick recap on chapter 43. So in chapter 43, they run out of food, and Jacob has to be convinced that he is going to let them go in the way they need to. And they go, and they are invited when they see Joseph into his house for lunch. They go to his house, and they get the person who's the ruler or the head, the chief servant in that house, and it's like, look, here's the situation. Last time we was here, we were offered, we purchased corn, but they gave us all our money back. And when they tell him that, he's like, nah, your God has favor on you. Your God bless you with that. Don't even worry about it. And they give him back Simeon. Then they come in, and they all bow before Joseph. When he gets in from work for his lunch meal, he then came home for lunch, and he gets there, and they bow before him and present him with these gifts that the father said bring. And he is so overwhelmed with emotion after seeing all of his brothers. All 11 are in front of him, and they bow in the way that he saw in his dream when he was a kid. And it doesn't say that he remembered the dream in that moment. It doesn't say any of that, because it wasn't necessary to say. He was overcome by emotion and had to go out and get some tears out. He is weeping from his soul, and got it all out, and came back in to sit and eat with his brothers. And while he's sitting and eating with them, he gives his youngest brother, Benjamin, same mother, same father, the only brother who shares the same mother and father with him. And he is so overjoyed at being next to this kid again, this guy again, that he gives him 5 times as much as everybody else. So he's good and happy and loose and free. And they have an ultimate, awesome reunion. Even though they still don't know it's Joseph, Joseph knows that he and his brothers are all together again. And he's had an opportunity to rest and meal and eat and party and fellowship with them, to learn about them and hear about them and know what their lives are like. And so they get to have this moment, okay? We are going to pick up in part 3. Because I said, it's going to be a lot of parts. It is. And we're going to move forward from there in the next video. So you guys, remember, when you have an opportunity to get back, don't. Give them God. Don't get back. Give them God. Y'all be blessed.